Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. For 20 years, Jenny and Mark had built a life together, their marriage a tapestry woven with love, routine, and the recent adjustment to an empty home. With their son and daughter now pursuing their studies at college, they suddenly found themselves with ample time alone. Yet Mark couldn't ignore the growing sense that something between them had changed. Jenny seemed withdrawn, her restlessness apparent, and her eyes often avoided his during their conversations. The disquiet began to gnaw at him after he spotted her having lunch with a man he didn't recognize, a man strikingly attractive and clearly not just another colleague. Although the interaction he witnessed seemed innocent enough, Jenny's reaction when he asked about it disturbed him even more. She flatly denied being there, insisting that he must have mistaken her for someone else. Mark, certain of what he'd seen, found her denial troubling. If it had been a casual meeting, perhaps with a client or a co-worker, why lie about it? The secrecy weighed heavily on his mind. One evening, after dinner, they settled into the living room. As Jenny busied herself with clearing the table, Mark prepared their coffee. Polite small talk filled the silence, but Mark couldn't hold back any longer. The tension was unbearable. "Jenny," he began carefully, "you've seemed so distracted lately. Is something going on?" Jenny's shoulders sagged as she set her cup down, avoiding his gaze. After a long pause, she took a deep breath. "There's something I need to tell you, Mark," she said, her voice wavering. "Before we met, there was someone else in my life. His name was John. We went to college together. We weren't close, not even friends, really. In fact, I didn't like him much as a person. But there was something about him I couldn't explain, a kind of magnetic pull." She hesitated, her words tinged with uncertainty. "Twice, we almost crossed the line into something more, but each time circumstances interrupted us. We never had a physical relationship, but those moments left me wondering, as if I'd left something unfinished. After graduation, we lost touch. Then I met you, and John became a distant memory. I fell in love with you, Mark. Completely. I never thought about him again. Until recently." Mark's heart sank as she continued, her voice trembling. "John started working at my company a few weeks ago. When I saw him in the lunchroom, it completely threw me off. I can't explain it. I don't even like him as a person. But I feel this undeniable pull toward him again." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I've been trying to avoid him, but it's been hard. I've been distracted, distant, and I know it's affected us. Mark, I love you. That hasn't changed. But this feeling is consuming me, and I don't know how to handle it." Jenny's voice faltered as she confessed, "I think the only way to resolve this is to confront it. I need to have a brief affair with John. I'm certain it's the only way to move past these feelings and refocus on us. It's purely physical, Mark. It doesn't diminish how much I love you." Mark stared at her, her words hitting him like thunderclaps. His mind raced to process what she'd just admitted. Jenny's face was flushed, her eyes a mix of hope and fear as she waited for him to respond. The air between them felt heavy, the silence deafening. Mark's anger simmered just beneath the surface, but he forced himself to stay composed. After counting silently to 10, he finally spoke. "Jenny, what you've said, it's staggering. I can't give you an answer right now." He took a deep breath, steadying himself. "If I'm hearing you correctly, you've already made this decision without consulting me or considering how I might feel. That leaves me with two choices: to refuse outright and say this is unacceptable, or to agree and try to ignore the pain it would cause me." His voice hardened as he continued. "How can you believe this will help us? How does this solve anything?" Jenny's voice quivered as she replied, "Mark, I just need closure. Once it's over, I can fully commit to you again without any distractions. Can't you see that?" Mark shook his head slowly. "Not now, Jenny. I need time to think about this. I love you deeply. I always envisioned us growing old together, cherishing the memories we've built. But this—" He paused, struggling to find the right words. "Let's sleep on it. I'll stay in the guest room tonight. We'll talk tomorrow evening after dinner. Until then, I don't want to discuss it further." His tone grew firmer. "And tomorrow at work, you'll avoid John. If he approaches you, make an excuse. Let him know you're too busy. This isn't a suggestion, Jenny. It's what I expect. Do you understand?" Jenny nodded, her expression filled with resignation and unease. Mark gave her a brief, perfunctory hug before retreating to the guest room. His mind churned with conflicting emotions, a storm of anger, hurt, and disbelief. Alone in the dark, Jenny lay awake, her thoughts racing. Had she made the right choice in being honest with Mark? Would it have been better to keep this to herself? No, she decided. A secret betrayal would have shattered them if Mark ever found out. Yet, the look in his eyes, a mixture of pain, anger, and betrayal, haunted her. She wondered if their marriage could survive this. Only time would reveal the answer. "I chose to conceal the truth about having lunch with John, though I suspected Mark had already pieced it together." Her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. A hope that he might come to terms with it tomorrow clashed with an anxiety that he could forbid her from ever meeting John again. What would she do in that case? Could she honor his wishes, or would she risk defying him? These unsettling thoughts followed her into a restless and uneasy sleep. Meanwhile, Mark lay in bed wide awake, his thoughts in turmoil. At first, he assumed I too was struggling to process the revelation Jenny had shared. He felt cornered, searching for a solution that wouldn't leave either of them burdened with regret. Agreeing to her request felt like a blow to his pride, a step that would leave him open to ridicule and self-recrimination. The idea was intolerable, gnawing at his sense of self. On the other hand, refusing might compel Jenny to abandon John completely, or worse, to disregard his wishes entirely, leading their marriage to unravel. The thought of losing her was unbearable. They had invested so much in their relationship. Yet conceding to something that made him feel diminished was equally agonizing. Even if she complied with his refusal, a lingering sense of unfulfilled desires could cast a shadow over their lives together. It felt like an unsolvable dilemma, where no option seemed bearable. Perhaps suggesting a long getaway could rekindle their bond and help Jenny let go of this infatuation. He considered countless scenarios, only to discard them as flawed. Finally, as if struck by inspiration, a plan began to form in his mind. Deciding to let the idea settle overnight, he rolled over, allowing exhaustion to take over, determined to revisit his thoughts in the morning. He resolved to clear his schedule and give this matter his undivided attention. Morning arrived, and the two followed their usual routine, though their weariness was evident. Jenny covered her tired eyes with makeup, and their words were sparse. A brief exchange of "have a good day" and a quick kiss marked their parting for work. Mark found it difficult to concentrate, though he doubted anyone noticed apart from his ever-observant secretary, Pat. Sensing something amiss, she adjusted his schedule to give him the breathing room he needed. He instructed her to shield him from interruptions, permitting only the most urgent matters to reach him. That evening, Mark came home to find Jenny in the kitchen, preparing a meal far more elaborate than her usual weekday fare. He recognized it as her way of expressing her continued care. The food was exquisite, but their conversation was sparse and stilted. Jenny's unease was tangible, and an air of tension hung over them. After dinner, they moved to the living room, coffee cups in hand, and Mark cleared his throat, signaling he had something significant to say. "I imagine you're waiting for my response to what you told me last night," he began. Jenny nodded without speaking. "This has been one of the most challenging decisions I've ever faced," he continued. "After careful thought, I've decided to grant your request to pursue a relationship with John." Jenny's face lit up with relief, and she instinctively moved toward him, but he raised a hand to stop her. "There are conditions," he said firmly. "I understand your desire to explore this, and I'm willing to allow it. But during our marriage, I've had my own opportunities, women who made their interest in me very clear. I resisted because I value our commitment. However, I've often wondered what it might be like. Would it be better, worse, simply different?" He proceeded to outline his terms. "You may see John, but it must be discreet. He is not to enter our home, and you are not to discuss him with me. During this time, I'll move to the guest room while you remain in the master bedroom. For however long this continues, whether weeks or up to 2 months, we will not share a bed or engage in intimacy." Mark paused, observing her reaction before continuing. "When you're ready to end the relationship with John, you will ask me to return to the master bedroom. That will signify it's over. However, once I've moved back, you'll take my place in the guest room for twice the duration I spent there. During that period, you will be faithful to me, refraining from meeting any men outside our usual social circles. Meanwhile, I will have the freedom to see other women if I choose. Like you, I won't bring anyone into our home or share any details with you." As he spoke, Jenny's expression shifted, first to confusion, then sorrow. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. Before she could respond, Mark interjected, "Take 24 hours to think about this. Make sure you fully understand what it means before making your decision." Jenny sat quietly, absorbing his words. The relief she had initially felt was replaced by a painful reckoning. She had never paused to consider the fairness of such an arrangement. The image of Mark with another woman struck her deeply, stirring a profound sense of guilt. As memories of their shared history and love surfaced, her perspective began to shift. The thought of Mark in someone else's arms unsettled her, leaving her to question whether this path was worth the price it could exact on their marriage. What had I done? How could I ever fix this chaos? Bewilderment and hopelessness overtook me entirely. The brief moments he used to spell out his conditions seemed to stretch endlessly. Fragments of our shared history raced through my mind, and for a fleeting instant, John was nowhere to be found in my thoughts. John had vanished from my consciousness entirely, like the morning mist dissolving under a blazing sun. Turning to Mark, Jenny spoke with unflinching resolve. "I don't need time to think this over. My decision is already made. I accept your terms, Mark." Her decisiveness left Mark taken aback. He had braced himself for reluctance, but her immediate agreement caught him completely off guard. Mark had no genuine desire to pursue anyone else, but he had believed that his proposition would deter her from continuing with John. He had clearly underestimated her feelings. It was painfully apparent now that John held far more significance to her than Mark had ever suspected. As Jenny's words kept flowing, Mark felt like he was hearing her from behind a thick, muffling fog. "Mark, are you paying attention?" Her voice finally broke through the haze. "Yes, Jenny, I heard you. You've agreed to my conditions." "That's right," Jenny confirmed. "But there's more. I've asked you to return to the master bedroom tonight. I'll move my things to the guest room right away, but I'll only stay there for 2 nights. Mark, I love you. I've been selfish and I deserve whatever this brings. I'll endure the pain of the next 48 hours just as I've caused you pain. But please, come back to our bedroom tonight." Mark studied her for a moment, his face betraying no emotion, before he offered a faint smile. "If that's what you want, Jenny, I'll move back tonight. But just so you know, I've been mentally listing all the beautiful women I could pursue in the coming weeks. You've given me only a single day and night to act, which significantly narrows my options. That's fine, though. But don't expect me for dinner tomorrow. I'll be late." Part of him wanted her to remain in the master bedroom and retract her offer, but another part couldn't resist making her feel a fraction of the pain she'd caused him. Sparing her was not an option he intended to choose. A year and 2 days later, Mark emerged from the basement, holding a bottle of Dom Perignon 1993. He had saved it for a moment that truly mattered. Curious, Jenny asked why he had brought it out. "It's been a year since you moved back into the master bedroom," he said with a smile. She kissed him softly and remarked on his wisdom and compassion in addressing their struggles. Pouring 2 glasses, Mark said, "Jenny, a year ago I came home wearing Chanel No. 5, a scent you dislike. You also noticed the lipstick mark on my collar, one that wasn't your shade, didn't you?" "Yes," she admitted, "but I chose not to mention it. We had an agreement, after all. I didn't like it. In fact, I hated it. But I accepted it because I knew I had earned it. And even then I loved you. I still do. I was a fool." "I love you too, Jenny," Mark replied. "And even though we agreed not to revisit that night, I need to tell you something. Do you remember Philip Carter, one of my clients who visits annually? He's in town again and joining us for dinner tomorrow with his wife, Sharon. Last year, they arrived the same day you dropped your revelation on me. That night, I went out alone. It was a pleasant evening, but before heading home, I asked Sharon for a favor. I asked her to spray me with her perfume, touch up her lipstick, and kiss my collar. She agreed, though she and Philip were understandably confused. I told them it was a bet, not the truth. Jenny's expression shifted as she processed his words. Before she could speak, Mark continued. I wanted you to think I'd been with someone else, to hurt you the way I'd been hurt. Learning about John cut me deeply, but now it no longer matters. I'm sorry for what I did. It was petty and unnecessary. Please forgive me. Taking her hands in his, he added, We're human. We make mistakes. People who don't either lack emotions or live like saints. I don't want a saint, Jenny. I want someone full of love and passion, but I need you to promise never to hurt me like that again. Tears welled in Jenny's eyes as she clasped his hands tightly. Without a word, she guided him to their bedroom. There, she undressed him tenderly, her movements filled with care and sincerity. She knelt before him, her gaze locked onto his, radiating love and regret. Slowly she reached for him, her touch gentle and deliberate. Mark pulled her to her feet, embracing her fully. Their kiss deepened, their bond reaffirmed in silence. In that moment, they both understood their love was resilient and enduring, capable of carrying them through the years to come. As for John, his life crumbled. His wife, Susan, divorced him, and he lost his job due to an inappropriate relationship with a coworker. Stripped of his social standing, which had been tied to Susan's career, he was forced to move away. Likely he now spends his days chasing fleeting distractions in some obscure town, a mere shadow of the man he once was. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.